Today to welcome you to Cattlemen's Day. We're very proud of the program that our staff has put together for you for Cattlemen's Day today. And I want to start out by just sharing a few thoughts with you about the Department of Animal Sciences and Industry. Just a little over a year ago, I had the opportunity to come back to Manhattan, Kansas as the department head of the Department of Animal Sciences and Industry. And I was a student here in this department and in the College of Veterinary Medicine back in the late 70s and early 80s. And my memories of this department and this institution are very fond because at that time I had a lot of people here who actually cared about my future. And their caring about my future had a lot to do with my career path and the opportunities that came along for me and any successes that I might have had in that career path. Upon my return to K-State, I found that same culture continuing to exist here. We have a culture in the Department of Animal Sciences and Industry that I like to describe as a students first culture. We believe very, very strongly that our youth are the future of this industry and this country, and we take very seriously our responsibility for helping them grow as young people and develop into leaders of this industry. In addition to that, we also take very seriously our responsibility to the industry. You notice that the name of this department is Animal Sciences and Industry, and that decision was made a long, long time ago, but I think it's a significant decision because what it does is it recognizes and acknowledges that our tight connection with producers, with organizations that supply products into the livestock industries, with the meat industry, the entire food chain are very, very important. And we serve those industries through research and through outreach and by preparing people for their human resource needs. And we take those responsibilities very seriously. So I'm delighted to be back at Kansas State. It's been just a real pleasure to be back here and have the opportunity to lead this department. I'd like to first of all thank Dr. Jim Drillard, Dr. Dale Blasey, and their entire team for the program that they've put together today. I think it's an outstanding program, and I want to comment on just a few of the speakers that you're actually going to hear from today. In a minute or two, I'm going to introduce Dr. Temple Grandin to you, and if there is someone in this industry that truly doesn't need an introduction, it would probably be Temple. We're going to be fortunate to hear some of her thoughts, and I'll tell you a little more about that in a few minutes. We also have Dr. Del Allen, who's going to be speaking here at 11 and talking about, with a little history, a little current picture of the industry and some of his thoughts about where this beef industry is actually headed to. Then we're going to have lunch, and after lunch we've got a number of breakout sessions that you can actually go to, but I want to call your attention to one session that I think will be particularly important. At 2:10 we have Dr. Ted Schroeder and Dr. Jim Minert, and the title we gave them was Biofuels Expansion, $100 crude oil, and a weak U.S. dollar. What are the implications for the U.S. beef industry? And I can think of no single issue that's having more effect on our industry today than the explosive growth in the ethanol industry. We've gone within a couple of years from costs of gains in feedlot cattle of maybe 50 cents a pound to perhaps $1 a pound. And the ramifications of that ethanol growth on the beef industry are actually enormous. And I think in the presentation from Dr. Schroeder and Dr. Minert, I think you'll get kind of the first-hand look up close of kind of the current understanding of what's going on and what their view would be about the implications for the future of our beef industry and how those of us working in this industry might actually adapt to those changes that are actually there. So I'm very proud of the program that the staff has put together, and I think you'll enjoy the opportunity today. We also have something else going on today. We have AgriTalk broadcasting live in the arena. If you're not familiar with AgriTalk, it's a national talk radio program on about 70 radio stations nationally. They are interviewing several of our speakers who are participating in the program, and they're actually starting their show just about right now, probably already on the air for just a few minutes with Dr. Jim Drillard. So another way of trying to get a little more exposure for the program we have here at K-State to a broader audience as well. At this time, I'm very pleased to introduce to you Dr. Temple Grandin. Dr. Grandin has a BA degree from Franklin Pierce College, a master's degree from Arizona State University, a PhD from the University of Illinois, and was a consultant in the industry and remains one today. But we had the good fortune when I was at Colorado State in 1990 to actually hire Temple into a part-time faculty position. And she and I were colleagues on the faculty at Colorado State there from 1990 to 1994, and actually had an opportunity to work with Temple and do research with her. And it was a real pleasure and a real opportunity for me as well, and I thoroughly enjoyed that opportunity. Temple has become internationally known on a variety of topics, but primarily in the area of livestock facilities, design of facilities, cattle handling, animal welfare, and has become a spokesperson for this industry on a number of what I would call the current animal welfare issues. She's appeared on 2020, on 48 Hours, on Larry King Live, on Primetime Live, on the Today Show. In fact, when I was at Colorado State, we had a segment of 2020 taped at my little operation with Temple. And she's also authored lots of publications and a number of books. Her two most notable books would be one called Thinking in Pictures. Temple is autistic and brings keen insight into thinking in animals, and the book called Thinking in Pictures. And then her more recent book called Animals in Translation, which was on the New York Times bestseller list. So we're absolutely delighted to have Temple with us today, so please join me in welcoming Temple Grandin to Kansas State University.
Well, it's really great to be here, and I've been in this industry for 35 years. Started out strictly working on designing facilities, and then later on in my career, back in about 1999, I'm just getting over the flu. Started working with McDonald's Corporation on their animal welfare auditing. There's a lot of really good changes that have taken place in the industry. And the thing that frustrates me on this Hallmark thing, and it absolutely frustrates me, is all the public sees is all this bad stuff. I did a little search on YouTube, and I typed in cattle. And the first 3 hits were okay. That wasn't too bad. Feedlot. The 3rd hit was horse slaughter. The 4th hit was like some 12-year-old girl like running around in the feed yard going, oh, well, dead calfie over here. Other cows can see that. That's bad. Dairy cattle. The 4th hit was hardcore animal rights. Slaughter was totally bad. Meat, the first 2 things were things I didn't dare click on a university computer. I mean, we need to be showing our good stuff. You know, like how you go out and save a calf. I've got to get some of my stuff up on YouTube. I've been traveling so much, I've been able to sit down with Cheryl and pick out the right clips to put up there. But we need to be putting stuff up there. Feedlot, the first thing, I mean, it was really goofy. I typed in feedlot, you get this weird video, some guy in a car driving by a feed yard. No narration. You know, then you get down a little bit further, and it was some advertisements for a feed yard. That was all right. Cattle ranch was sad. The first 3 things were ranches for sale. I thought that was very, very sad. I mean, this is what, you know, the public's seen. We better get real on the internet. I did my talk last night, and I had a student ask me who was very interested in video and audiovisual. He says, well, who can put stuff up on YouTube? I said, anybody. You ought to see them. I mean, it's just total amateur stuff. We need to be getting our message out to the public. And for the last 9 years, I've worked on improving the meat plants. The McDonald's and Wendy's audits have made tremendous, huge improvements. And everybody thinks Hallmark. That frustrates me. You know, McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, Whole Foods, all these companies, they got great technical staff, that have implemented the animal welfare audits, but I don't know what corporate PR is doing. Corporate PR is not getting the message out there. And you know, the problem is when you get trashed, you need to be opening up the door, not shutting it. I think we need to start thinking about everything that we do. If I took my Christmas guests out there, my wedding guests, my out-of-town guests, you're going to be squirming around. Now, fortunately, beef doesn't have that many problems. A well-run beef slaughter plant passes that test. I spent an hour on the phone talking to a reporter yesterday out in California that went to Manning Beef, very progressive little company. They make Brant natural beef, and they let him into the plant. And he goes, well, I thought I was going to puke, but it turned out it was just fine. They just walk up the chute. I'm proud of the things I've designed. And I'm going to be getting some of that stuff up on YouTube. I mean, I've got to get that done. I have to admit I don't know how to do it. I am going to have somebody else do it. But I've got to sit down and pick out the video clips and get some of my things up there. I mean, and you know, the public doesn't know about these things. And Animals in Translation, I got a lot of stuff out there, but we better start communicating. And we also better clean up our house. And what went on at Hallmark was disgusting, and somebody thinks it was staged. It was not staged. Don't even get that stuff started on the message boards. That's just absolutely stupid. Okay, I want to do a little short talk on cattle handling because I don't like just talking about all the bad stuff. So we're going to do a little quick talk on cattle handling, and then I'm going to get into some more stuff about consumers. One of the most important things in handling an animal is having a calm animal. If an animal gets upset, it takes 20 to 30 minutes to calm down. So don't get them upset in the first place. Calm cattle are easier to sort. They don't get all panicked and stuck together. One of the things you need to do in your facilities is find the things that animals are afraid of. I always get asked by the public, do animals know they're going to get slaughtered? I had to answer that question very early in my career. So I'd go to the Swift plant and watch them go up the chute. I'd go to a feed yard, watch them go up the vaccinating chute. And I go, oh, they're behaving the same way in both places. They're not afraid of the same stuff we're afraid of. This pig is looking right at dripping water coming down with a reflection on it. That's the kind of stuff they're afraid of. A chain hanging down in a chute. Why do I have to keep talking about this? I went to 5 feed yards in Texas this summer, and 2 of them had chains hanging down in their chute. So I can't throw this slide away yet. You need to get in your chute and see what they're seeing. Because you find these little distractions and you take them out of your facility, it makes it work. One of the things I was amazed when we started auditing the meatpacking plants is that the older plants, some of the older plants, kind of a little bit on the shabby side, we got them working really good. Not quite as good as my state-of-the-art things. But it was like the difference between an A student and a good solid B plus and B student. But we took out all these distraction things. There's a lot of little things you can do to improve your facility. Then, of course, you're building new. We've got lots of nice drawings for new. And you certainly don't want to copy those old designs. Look for the things they don't like. Changes in flooring. They tend to stop. Cattle have lousy depth perception. There's some change in the floor, they got to stop and put the head down. You know, put some dirt over where the concrete goes to dirt so they don't see it. Reflections. We're going right into the sun here. Maybe change the time of day that you're working the animals if you're going right into the sun. Animals tend to go from a dark place to a bright place, but they don't go into blinding light. So I'm amazed at how much cattle are controlled by their vision. Get down in the chute and see what they're seeing. You know, and sometimes putting some solid sides up is going to make a big improvement. Look at the shadows you've got on there. You'll often have more problems on a sunny day. Cloudy days, you don't have shadows. There's some more examples of shadows. I know you can't get rid of all the shadows. But what I want to try to do is make you be a better observer. You see, I'm a visual thinker. I think totally in pictures. To understand animals, you've got to get away from language. And one of the things I found on these distractions is I had to develop checklists. There's a checklist on Grandin.com. There's a checklist in Animals in Translation. So they can just go down the checklist of all the different things that kind of scare them. Because the normal human mind that thinks in language tends to overlook these details. but these details can absolutely wreck cattle handling. This is what I call the black hole. We have this in a lot of feed yard handling facilities, sunny outside, and you got like a black movie theater inside. Cattle don't want to go in. I went out to one feed yard, they wanted to tear out the whole facility. You know how I fixed it? I opened up a door to let more light into a building, right? Another thing you can do is rip some of the tin off and replace it with white translucent plastic. Because the kind of lighting I want it to look like a bright, cloudy day. I want to get rid of the shadows. Now, inside a plant, where I'm inside a building, I can do it all with artificial lighting. But the problem is, sun's 100 times brighter than any light I can go out and buy. So you're better off, like on a ranch or a feed yard, getting these white translucent panels in, so I can get in lots of daylight. There, of course, are my nice curved facilities. Why does a curved chute work? Because as they come on around the bend, they think they're going back to where they came from. And you've got to lay these things out right. You want you got, please follow the drawings exactly on my webpage. And I'm proud of the things I've built. And I've got to get this stuff up, better stuff up on YouTube. You've got 12-year-old kids putting up dead Kathy in the feed yard. Some guy driving by a feed yard in his car. I mean, amateurish. I mean, there's children are making some of these videos. Let's get some decent stuff up there. We've got to communicate. But there's a tendency to, when you get scared and you get bashed, to get a stockade mentality. This industry has had a very bad stockade mentality. I kind of made a comment to one of the meat magazines, so why don't we just put a video camera up in the plant and put a live feed out to the internet? And the industry thought I'd gone out of my mind. Well, maybe we ought to do some things. You could have, let's say taking pigs or something, sows with piglets, things like that they could look at. You know what the public's imagining is going on in agriculture is 10 times worse. We've got to be showing stuff. You can't just have these big mysterious sheds with animal rights people say all this evil horrors go on in there. Nope, we need to be showing things. We need to be putting things out where people can see it. And one thing about the internet is some 12-year-old girl making a goofy dead Kathy video. She's number 4 on the feedlot search board. Whether you're a little girl or you're the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, YouTube and the internet don't make any differentiation. You better start getting it, how the internet really works. Okay, people working with animals need to understand things like flight zone. One of the things we learned as we worked on these McDonald's audits is there's some people that just shouldn't be there handling animals. They just enjoy roughing them up. I hate to say it, and they shouldn't be there. But people need to understand basic animal handling principles, like the flight zone, the point of balance. I've got stuff on Grandin.com, both in English and Spanish, that explain these basic concepts. I've got some little videos on there of just really nice movement of cattle. Right there, I'm demonstrating turning an animal with some streamers on the end of a stick. Now, if he's calm, this works really well. But the mistake that people make is they get way too aggressive. You need to get your mouth shut and get the hot shots out of your hand. I'm not going to say we should ban hot shots, but get them out of your hand. I found that when you take that weapon out of people's hands, the whole attitude towards the animals got better. The first thing you got to do is get all the distractions out of your facility. Here's one of my nice round crowd pens. As they come on around the bend, they think they're going back to where they came from. And notice the crowd gate's not pushed up tight. I want to try to get you to use behavior to control animals rather than force. Fill your crowd pen half full. I cannot emphasize that enough. If it holds 5 stuffed, well, then it's too small. If it holds 10 stuffed, you put 5 in. Holds 20 stuffed, you put 10 in. Animals ought to go up that chute easily, and if they don't go up that chute easily, you need to find the thing that's spooking them and get rid of it. And you know what a real common thing that they don't like? You might have a backstop gate right in there. Put a remote control rope on it so you can hold it open for the animals. That you can work from back in the crowd pen. but fill it half full. We also ought to call it the passing through pen. You know, wait until there's space in the chute, and then bring them on around, and they just never stop in the crowd pen. They stop in a crowd pen too long, they're going to get all balled up in there. Watch your ear radar on horses and cattle. And all these distractions I'm telling you about, horses are afraid of those. Oh, I didn't realize that was. You know, horses are afraid of those things too. Look at your ear radar. See how the horse and the zebra have an ear on each other? And the other ear is on me. Be observant. And when they put the ear back, they're either scared or they're aggressive. And if it's happening during handling or training, they're probably scared. Here are some simple behavioral principles of restraint. I cannot emphasize enough in cattle handling facilities the importance of non-slip flooring. When we started doing the McDonald's audits, especially on some of the older plants, we had to put a non-slip floor into every single beef stunning box. Nope, we didn't have to rebuild it. We just had to weld some steel rods on the floor to make it non-slip. You know, blocking vision. I do a thing when I would go to the plants, I'd do this thing, I call it my lights and cardboard trick. So I'd get great big pieces of cardboard from these combo boxes, and I'd get a light on an extension cord. I'd try to light up a dark chute. I'd cover up some places where they could see moving equipment. It was amazing how it made it work. And then I said, well, I'll go replace that with something better than cardboard. But I wanted to demonstrate to people, you know, behavior. Jerky motion scares animals. You know, you don't need to squish them with a squeeze chute. You know, I went out to one feed yard and they were going, oh, this squeeze chute doesn't work, it doesn't hold them. Well, that wasn't the greatest squeeze chute. But they were back there yelling and screaming and hot-shotting. I said, let's get rid of all the yelling and screaming and hot-shotting, and then the squeeze chute's going to work. And then it worked. A lot of squeeze chutes, the cleats are too far apart. Calm handling, where animals are not going berserk in the chute, you're going to get better weight gain. We did a study on this 10 years ago. When I worked on this 10 years ago, people thought I was crazy. But these cattle that are what I call a berserk rating, where they're trying to just go completely crazy, get out of the squeeze chute, they have lower weight gain. Calm handling pays. Let's look at some stress levels, some fear levels. Beef cattle up there, lots of yelling and screaming and electric prods, 63 nanograms of cortisol. I get a 2/3 reduction in the stress if I just get things calmed down. The first thing we got to do in cattle handling is calm down. I don't know how many ranchers' wives have said to me, if I could just get my husband to stop screaming at cattle. The research is very clear. Screaming at cattle is stressful. Dairy cows are lower because they voluntarily do things. You can get cattle to walk through things voluntarily. Let's say you're doing pasture rotation. I want them walking into the next pasture in a controlled manner, not being, forced, walking at a walk and trot. You're going to have a lot less stress. Animal's a visual thinker. Man on a horse, man on the ground, two totally different things. And if cattle are not trained for going in and out of pens on foot, let's say they've just been worked on horses, you can have a real mess at a meat plant, a real dangerous, bad mess at a meat packing plant. Same thing on your horse. You can get a horse you can ride, maybe you can't do groundwork. Well, stuff on the ground, stuff on the back, that's two different file folders in the animal's mind. In 1999, when I started the McDonald's program, prior to starting it, I did a survey for the U.S. Department of Agriculture on 24 slaughter plants, and I was to evaluate them. And it was with a USDA grant. In 1996, I went out to all those plants, and I developed a measurement system. So it wasn't just my opinion as to whether their stunning or their handling was good or bad. I measured it with numbers. I measured things like percentage of cattle electric prodded, percentage that fall down. And that measurement system is the basis of the American Meat Institute guidelines now. One of the big problems we've got with USDA is they don't train their inspectors. Their guidelines are way too wishy-washy. There's way too much room for, discretion on things. When we get back to this downer thing, if the cow passes antemortem inspection and then she goes down, it's the inspector's discretion. Well, you can get them up with a forklift? Come on now. In fact, right after this mess happened, the manager of the plant called me, and he said he didn't know this stuff was going on. I'm going, that's absolute rubbish. You were renting that forklift. Somebody was writing a check out to some rental company so you could have that forklift there. Don't tell me you didn't know about that. That's absolutely ridiculous. No, I think this measurement system I'm going to show you, I think USDA needs to adopt something like this. Another one of my big frustrations on handling, and I've been working on handling for 35 years, is we put in a new facility somewhere, I'd go out and do startup, get everything really wonderful, really calm, peaceful, really fantastic handling. I'd come back a year later, and the handling had deteriorated. Not at every place. What kept me going is about 20% of my clients were true believers, and they kept me going. If I didn't have those true believers, I would have just gone crazy. But there were others that slid back into rough practices, and the thing is, they didn't know it was happening. They did not realize it was happening. That's what I call bad becoming normal. And you can slip into bad becoming normal and just not realize it. Okay, if we are involved in writing guidelines for anything, not just animal welfare, but food safety, anything, we got to ban these three horrid words. One person's idea of proper handling or something that's adequate might be somebody else's idea of torturing them. You've got to define what it means, and this is one of the problems we got right now with USDA inspection. The guidelines are not clearly written, most of them. There's a few things that are clearly written. In fact, the only thing that's clearly written for the USDA is that you do not drag downers. That's clearly written, but a lot of the other stuff is not. Here's an example of a clearly written guideline. All the pigs have to have enough space so they can lay down at the same time without being on top of each other. In fact, I forgot to put in there at the same time, because you got some joker in there that's going to go, oh, well, they can take turns. People get very, very creative about how they can wiggle at it for doing things that they don't want to do. Okay, here is the measurement system that's been used with the meat plants. This is used by McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Whole Foods, Safeway. Okay, the first thing you measure is the percentage of animals you stunned right. How many cattle did you get down with one shot? Has to be 95% to pass. How many animals did you render insensible before you hung them up? That has to be all of them. That's one of the few things that has to be 100%. But there's no way the stunner can work perfectly. Percentage of animals you poked with the electric prod. I can count them. And when we first got started, it was 500%. You know, now it's down to 15%. Percentage of cattle that moo and bellow. Sensitive indicator of bad things being done to them. Now we measure that going up into the stunning box. They moo in the stunning box, something bad's going on. And the percentage that fall. Now the thing is, these measurements are outcomes of bad practices. I'm not telling the plant how to design anything. You know, one of the things the only way I could convince the industry to implement this system is I had to promise them I wouldn't try to sell them any equipment. So I had to do everything I could do to make whatever piece of junk they had there work. We did lots of lights and cardboard and lots of floor gratings. Lots and lots of floor gratings. And then those rubber mats came in that are woven out of old tires. Those didn't exist when we started. Well, lots of those kind of things. Well, the thing is, falling can be caused by a slippery floor, or it can be caused by rough handling. It's an outcome of bad practices. Vocalization, it can be caused by a sharp edge sticking into them, working the animal over with an electric prod, slamming a gate on it. It's an outcome of bad things. And the thing that was really great is whether I audited a plant, Wendy's audited a plant, or McDonald's audited a plant, we got the same pass rates. That's what's called inter-observer reliability. I'm very, very proud of it. I'm very proud of my American Meat Institute guideline because it really works. When we implemented this program in 1999, I saw more change than my whole entire career. And let me tell you right now, Hallmark is not in this program. They do not sell meat to any client that I have worked with. I've worked with Safeway, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Whole Foods, and some others. And Hallmark's customers I had not worked with. Okay, in 1996, only 30% of the plants could shoot 95% of the cattle on the first shot. Okay, you know what the number one reason why it failed? They did not maintain the equipment. They simply didn't take care of the gun. They never cleaned it. They never replaced any of the parts in it. They put dirty air supply in it. They let their cartridges get wet. It was just sloppy stuff. And then in 1999, we started McDonald's audits. And my job was to train the auditors on this system. Now, it was very interesting working with the high-up executives of these companies. Because before we started on this, animal welfare was this like vague, abstract concept that you delegate to PR, you delegate to the legal department, you know, make it go away. Well, I took vice president level executives out on their first trips of slaughter plants, feed yards, pig farms, chicken farms. And when things were going just fine, they're going, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. But I remember the day when a vice president saw an emaciated, half-dead dairy cow going into their product. He was horrified. It was interesting seeing these eyes get opened up and going, yeah, there's some things we need to fix. And most of the problems, we didn't have to buy new equipment. There's 75 pork and beef plants. There's about 48 beef plants on the McDonald's approved supplier list. Only 2 of the beef plants had to put in new facilities. Everybody else we fixed with all the little simple things. The other thing is, out of those 75 plants for beef and pork both, 3 plant managers had to be fired, you know, because they just didn't have the right, you know, management attitude. Now, the thing is, to keep things good, you got to keep doing it. Constant vigilance. I just looked at our 2007 data, and 2 plants screwed up royally. I'm very disappointed. One of them was a smaller plant, and they cut the leg off a live beef. I'm going, Now, the thing that was interesting in this is when you brought new plants into the system, only 25% of the plants would pass. They didn't know what was expected. So you're probably wondering, how did I set the limits? How did I get that 95% should pass? Or 3% vocalization? Or 1% falling? How did I get that? They were the top 25%, the top third of the, you set the bar with the top third passes in the beginning. High enough to bring the industry up. I've done some work with the Chicken Council. They wanted to set their limits so the worst places could pass. You want to set it where your good places will pass and give others time to work up. Okay, the industry right now in beef, they're running right around 97, 98% stunned on the first shot. They're doing really good. And then you got some animal rights groups misrepresenting that, saying, oh, well, the plant's cut up the other, 3%. No. That's first shot. Vocalization scores are running right around 2 and 3%. Well, before, we had plants with 20%, 50%, 60%, 35%. It was just absolutely gross. Percentage of cattle falling down is like 1 in 1,000 now. So you manage the things that you measure. Prod scores right around 15%, on the average. Some people say, well, let's ban electric prods. Well, I've seen too much abuse. So you ban them, like breaking tails off. And then there's 5 acts of abuse that are automatic failures. Dragging downers is the first one, and things like slamming gates on purpose on animals, sticking something up the rear. Those are the pig scores. The principle is that you're measuring a small number of critical control points that measure a multitude of problems. And they have to pass on all 5 of those numerically scored items to pass an audit. There's certain things where, you don't want a paperwork audit. That's not any good. It uses the same principle as HACCP. It's directly observable things that are outcomes of bad practices. I'm not telling you the plant how to make its equipment. They've got to do certain outcomes. Well, this is back when I did my baseline data for USDA. We had, I divided the plants up into rough and nice. 22% vocalization score in the rough ones and 4.5% in the good ones. So I knew it was possible to get this down really low. Let's look at things that distractions. How these distractions that you need to like track down on your own ranch can affect animals. Air blowing in the face. You got a lot more cattle vocalizing because you had to jam them with the electric prod. Okay, this happens to be pigs, but the same principle works for cattle. We added a light. I scored them. They had a 38% prod score, which fails. This is with well-trained handlers, only use the prod when they wouldn't go. And when I added a light on an extension cord in the entrance of their chute, I was able to drop it down to 4%. You see, and this is just, controlling these simple things that they can see, things that you can go home and do in your own facility. And I had I went up to the Horse Expo in Minnesota and watched Mr. Pate do one of his demonstrations. It was absolutely fantastic. He cannot overcome the distractions. I watched his demonstration twice, and he was going to put the cattle up there, up in the back side of the rodeo chute, and there were kids on the in the stands, and no, he couldn't get them in. Next time it worked fine. You've got to track these things down, and you've got to find them. And his demonstration was absolutely beautiful, absolutely, totally beautiful. But you've got to find these distractions. Here's simple stuff we did. We put a light on a restrainer entrance so they didn't have a black hole. Reduced the vocalization from 8% down to 0. There was this other thing where the squeeze chute. When you put the animal in the squeeze chute, they should not be reacting mooing from the squeeze chute. And if they are, you're hurting them with it, squashing them. Here's an example of some of the simple lights that we used. Simple things. Yep, because to get this implemented, I had to prove to the plants I wasn't going to sell them anything. Because I did have a conflict of interest. I had this big conflict of interest, and I got to practice reverse conflict of interest. And I did that. Another thing we got to look at is animals that are hard to drive. Now, this happens to be pigs, so we'll skip over that. Well, how about bad cattle? Big difference in the electric prod score between the good cattle and the bad cattle. Some of this is animals that have never had on-foot experience. And then they get into a plant, and they are just horrible. Before we started the USDA surveys, the average vocalization score was 8%. The worst plant in the USDA survey was 35%. But I've been in some other plants that weren't in the survey that were 50% and really awful. And right now the industry's running right around 2 and 3%. It's probably about as good as it's going to get. When we first started this, people didn't think they could do it. You can also determine with scoring, have I got a people problem or a facility problem? It's very important when you're trying to troubleshoot your cattle handling. People have a tendency to go, well, let's just rip out the whole entire facility. I have to say here at K-State, the facility there needs to be ripped out. And they're going to be, I'm very happy they've just approved to build one of my designs. I'm really super happy about that. But there's other situations where a ranch or a feed yard will have a fairly decent facility. Like this one that I opened the door up in, and they go, oh, let's tear it down. I go, wait a minute. I don't think we have to tear it down. I think we need to open a door. But you also have to make sure that you correct the people problems. Yelling and screaming, too many cattle in the crowd pen, just ramming and jamming, and that kind of stuff. Well, if cattle back up all the time in your facility, there's no way that you can have good handling. You got to find those distractions, and look how the vocalization score went up, because the prods, when they're backing up all the time. It makes good handling just completely impossible. Okay, let's look at doing handling measurements on your own ranch. I'm very pleased now that NCBA has come out with a pamphlet on this. You manage what you measure. And one of the things I'm really getting to push right now is measuring handling. Because I'm getting so frustrated where maybe on about half of the places I work with handling sort of slipping back bad, people don't realize it. I can count. How many cattle did I use the electric prod on? You touch it with the electric thingamajig, you count it. How many fell down? Its body touching the ground. How many ran into something, a fence or a gate? I can count them. The other thing I want to count, speeders. I want cattle walking and trotting. I don't want cattle running and jumping. And then how many cattle vocalize right when I catch them? Now, we do have to touch their ears, and they don't like it, and that will make them moo, and that's tough tooties, and we just have to do it. But we should be able to get them up the runway and get them caught in the chute with no mooing in direct response to being caught by the head gate. I notice now a lot of people want to have a lot of stuff, extra stuff out there to hold the head. I don't care how you design it, but they better not moo when you put that stuff on them, right, in direct response to having those neck benders and things applied to them. Now, when you're working on any kind of guidelines, you can have things you allow, or things you don't allow, like dragging downers. That these other things in handling, I mean, there's no way you could never have falling. There's no way you could never not have an animal vocalize. You have to put a number on it. That's the thing that makes it work. Well, in some systems, like the Whole Foods systems, they don't allow gestation stalls. They don't allow tail docking at dairy cows. And so they have these kind of guidelines. And let's look at what's going to happen with natural and organic and all these niche markets. I see the niche markets expanding to maybe 20 to 25% of the industry. It's going to be a big segment of the industry. I remember 15 years ago when Coleman Natural Beef started, there were some people in the industry, they didn't like Mr. Coleman very well. But now ranchers are lining up in droves trying to get into these programs because they're good programs in terms of, getting more money for your animals. Then you're going to have about 70% of the industry is going to be standard commercial. And it is going to have to be minus the sow stalls. Let me tell you about those sow gestation stalls. I did a little survey on United Airlines. I let United's computer pick out focus group participants sit next to me on planes. So I could show them pictures of sow stalls. And I had 4 pictures I showed them. I showed them nice pigs on slats, nothing wrong with them, just normal pigs, finishers on slats, and I showed them sow stalls. And I picked out my old stockmanship slide, the prettiest sow stalls I could find. I didn't pick out the big, long jail row pictures. And I just told them I was working with one of the major restaurant companies on standards of proper pig housing. I had kind of a structured interview. Well, you know what I found out? 1/3 had no opinion. 1/3 goes, this doesn't seem right. One guy goes, I wouldn't put my hunting dogs in that thing. And 1/3 hated them. 2/3 the public. There's now been studies now that have come out in feedstuffs, came up with the same results. My sister Katie, back east, and I could sell her a sow stall. It's been very, very interesting for me to do my book tour for Animals in Translation, going around all these major cities. And I got up there and I talked about that the cattle don't know they're going to get slaughtered. But you want to stand up at Borders Books, Rockefeller Center, New York City, and defend sow stalls? Would you like to die? No, sow stalls have got to go. But the finishers on the slats, most people were fine with that. A lot of people commented on how clean they look. Well, maybe we need to get a little piggy cam. You can watch your, your pork grow. And it just shows pigs, or maybe how about the Tyson chicken camera? Well, I think they're the company that throws a fit. You mention something like cameras. Well, you could start out and you could watch the chick grow. I mean, we've got city people now that just don't know anything about anything. I spent an hour on the phone yesterday talking to a reporter to explain the difference between old dairy cows, old beef cows, and feedlot cattle and young animals. I had to do cows 101. Well, it's important to take the time to do that. And when looking at these niche markets, there's a very interesting article that just came out recently in Feedstuffs, and most people assume that natural and organic automatically means good welfare too. The customer's very much into the whole lack of chemical things. Okay, stuff on there like cutting tendons. Well, these slides I've used in foreign countries, and there's certain really bad practices that isn't done in this country. The thing is, these continuous variables, they're directly observable things caused by either problems with facilities or problems with people. All right, let's look at things we can measure out on the farm. I've been working with Organic Valley. In fact, I have a student up there now, Wendy Fullwider, who's now their welfare person, animal well-being person. And I've been working with Nyman Ranch and some of the other niche marketers. Let's get some outcome-based, animal-based outcome measures. Well, body condition score. You know, these apply to all species. Lameness scoring. Zinpro.com/lameness. Fantastic web page for lameness scoring. Right now, they've just got it up for dairy cattle, but they plan to get one up for beef, too. How many animals are filthy dirty? My student, Wendy Fullwider, did a study on 113 dairies in the Midwest. These are dairies that have freestall barns, and she looked at swellings on the legs. And the really bad places have great big swellings bigger than baseballs. She divided the dairies into the 1/3 best and the 1/3 worst. And the 1/3 best had less than half as many lesions as the worst ones. Okay, what separated the bad dairies from the good dairies? It was management of the stall surface. Things like replacing sand, putting sawdust on it, cleaning them. In organic, one of my big welfare concerns is untreated lice, untreated problems. Now, the organic standard requires that sick animals be treated. But one of the things I want to check when I go out to these farms is I see a dinner plate bald spot cow, somebody's going to fail an audit. Indoor facilities, ammonia levels. You know, these are animal-based things that I can measure. And then abnormal behaviors. Okay, the thing about lameness as a measure, here's all the stuff that can make animals lame in a dairy. I'm not measuring this stuff. I'm not going to tell them how to do any of this stuff. I'm going to measure lameness. That's the outcome of bad leg genetics, bad flooring, rough handling. Their hoof trimming's awful or they don't have it. Nutritional mistakes, that's burning dairy cows up on grain. Their stalls are horrible and they don't clean them. Those are all things that can cause lameness. How do you set the level? You set the level so the top 25% can pass, and you give people time to work up. You know, because I'm a very, very practical person, and and I've really worked hard on improving this industry. And I have to say, this Hallmark thing has been the most frustrating, upsetting thing for me. But the thing is, my family all lives back east. And when I go on these book tours, I'm leaving Kansas. It's not Kansas out there. And I think you need to go home and you need to look at YouTube. I think that needs to be done for homework, and then have your kid put up some stuff for you. I'm going to have to hire somebody to put stuff up, because I hate to say it, 60 years old, I'm a total computer ignoramus. But I'm recognizing how important it is. A lot of people just are not recognizing it. I think there's some places we need to put some video cameras up and show things like, I'm proud of the stuff we do. I'm proud of my meat plant stuff. Why are we covering it up? Because if we cover it up, all that's up on YouTube right now is horrible South American videos. That's what's up there now. That's my website. And what I want to do right now is, we got just a few minutes here for questions. I want to do some questions. And if nobody has any questions, I'm going to pick somebody. So somebody better get their hand up and have some questions. Okay, eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Who am I going to pick? All right, right here.
The Hallmark debacle, I guess, or what's been
Yeah.
do you have any sense, are we to expect more from that?
Well, now the USDA is in wild crackdown mode. And this is what tends to happen with USDA. I remember 10 years ago during all the E. coli craze, I mean, there were plants, there was big plants, they were shutting them down for 3 and 4 days, real arbitrary. I just talked to talked to some people yesterday where they have a pig plant. USDA had given them a shutdown because there was some rough handling on a truck. I think maybe it deserved an NR, which is simply like giving them a speeding ticket. I don't think it deserved a shutdown. But what tends to happen when you don't use something like the objective scoring is you have these crazy crackdowns, and then it all tapers off, and then the different inspectors diverge from being super strict to allowing all kinds of bad stuff to go on. I'm really going to fault the USDA on their training of inspectors. I don't blame the field staff. They need to get good people in charge of things and you know, let them manage it. You know what the thing, one of the reasons why my scoring system worked is the plant knew exactly what they had to do. They knew exactly what the rules are. You know, it's like measuring speeding. Police don't just go out there and arbitrarily pull people over. They measure speeding, and you know what the speed limit is because it's posted. And we don't go into traffic court and argue over traffic laws because they're clearly written. We go into traffic court and argue over whether the radar gun is calibrated, but we don't argue about traffic laws. You see, when you think about it, traffic laws, for the most part, work pretty well because they're very objective. No, you measure the speed, and they usually are allowed 5 miles over, and then over that, you're going to get, you know, get pulled over. I mean, there's some discretion there for the policeman, but they're not just looking at cars and pulling them over, because if you do that, you're going to have one that's going to be crazy strict and another one that lets them do reckless driving and have them go by. You know, we've got to, you know, but I think we need, I'm really pleased the NCBA came out with a scoring thing, but what we got to do, 10% of the really bad places are responsible for most of the problems. Those bad cows that were there at Hallmark, they were there from 10% of the bad dairies. And I've been on the phone with reporters from California, and they had interviewed a dairyman that was defending bringing in these half-dead things so he could get his $600 for them. Well, they shouldn't be bringing them in. You know, we've got to work on it. There's 10% of the industry. I'm concerned, like looking at the beef industry. I said it's 25% is going to be niche, 70% when I'm going to standard big commercial, and 5% is going to be the rubbish market. And who's their customer? It's Joe's Hash House. In fact, I just found out that in Pennsylvania, the state-inspected plants, they don't have to obey USDA rules on downers or advertising out in the magazines that they'll take the cows that the USDA plants won't touch. Well, that's garbage niche right there.
We've got time for about maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
All right, 1 or 2 more questions? Okay, all right, right there.
With all the work you've done with guidelines for the packaging industry, do you see a desire from consumers to push that farther down the line, down to the feedlot and down to the cow calf?
All right, that's a really good question. I'm going to repeat it so they can hear it out in the other auditorium. The question was, are the big buyers going to go beyond the packing plants out in the farm? All of this stuff with guidelines has all been pushed by large meat buyers. Whole Foods, Safeway, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, places like that. Chicken is already being inspected out at the farm level because it's very vertically integrated. They're doing egg inspections. Some of the Organic Valley Dairy is going to start using objective scoring to measure things like leg lesions, body condition. Going to use a standard, scientifically published scoring systems. Well, for leg lesions, we got Fullwider et al., Journal of Dairy Science, and then the other ones we're going to use the standard things that have been published in the Journal of Animal Science, Journal of Dairy Science. Give plenty of time for people to work into it. You know, now they're a niche marketer, of course, but I think we better like figure out these things for ourselves. You know, and then some plants now even put in video auditing, because there are some places that get really good at faking good when you know, they see the clipboard out there. Then they behave themselves.
One more question. Do we have one last question?
Okay, I'm going to pick somebody. Well, let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Who should I pick? You've been very attentive. How about you?
What's the role of the public in influencing USDA or others to train inspectors?
Well, what's the role of the public? Well, let's look at things in the beginning, like when all these audits started. Activist pressure, I like to use a steel analogy, since I like to build things out of steel. Heat softens steel. And animal activists got their attention, and they had to get out of the abstract stratosphere and And when they went out on some of these slaughter plants, they were saying, you know, some bad things. You know, why are they doing this like recall, which from a food safety standpoint doesn't even make any sense? Well, I think some of it's political. But that doesn't solve problems in the long run. We need to get systems in place that are going to maintain, you know, a high level of performance and reasonable things that we can do. And I've written 5 refereed journal articles on my scoring system, you know, for cattle, Applied Animal Behavior Science, and the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association, to show that this works. You know, I'm also a believer in getting the scientific side in it. What I've tried to work on is to straddle the gap between the academic world and the we've got to have practical things. Because what's happening right now is the USDA is in a gigantic reaction. I mean, shutting a pig plant down because there was some rough handling on a truck, no, that's an NR. It's not a shutdown. You see, that's a gross overreaction. And then things kind of just calm down, and then what happens, since the inspectors aren't getting good direction, they kind of diverge and go from super lax to super strict again. Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for coming.
Please join me in thanking Temple Grandin.